Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up on the hazardous weather graphic, the wind advisories we had out for the Upper Yukon Valley yesterday have ended today, and now we're looking at a flood watch out here for the Seward area, the greater Seward area, that begins Sunday evening and will continue through Monday night into early Tuesday, and that's due to the heavy rains that are forecast to move into the area. They're currently back across Kodiak and the Alaska Peninsula. Today that area will shift eastward and probably result in some minor flooding in the Seward area. And moving on to the fire danger chart here, see up in the Upper Yukon Valley, still some high fire danger up in that area. And also back here to the northwest, Selawik Valley, up into the Noatak Valley area, Kotzebue, Kilburg, and the actually just about all the way over to nearly Shishmaref. They're in a high fire danger zone. But both of these areas will improve, especially tomorrow evening when a band of rain will move up across both of those areas there. In fact, from the Upper Yukon Valley across the Kobuk Valley, rain expected to move in to those areas overnight tomorrow night and into Monday. So that should greatly improve those conditions. And satellite imagery today shows a band bringing about another quarter of an inch of rain in the last 24 hours to the Brooks Range and areas across the mountains. There are lighter amounts on the north slope and Arctic coast, but Barrow did pick up about 0.13 of an inch during the day today. Otherwise, a break in the conditions here through the central and western interior areas into the Copper River Basin with some sunshine. And then the big storm down here that's the center is well south of the Alaska Peninsula, but a pretty good front. You can see the back edge quite vividly there coming up toward the Alaska Peninsula. This is a 1 a.m. shot, or actually that's the current shot, 1 p.m. in the afternoon, the latest imagery here. And that pushing rain, pretty significant rain already into Kodiak, picked up 1¼ inches during the day today, and even heavier rain occurring along the southern coast of the Alaska Peninsula. There, Chignik, during 12-hour period ending at 3 p.m., had received 2¼ inches of rain with a 24-hour amount of 3 1/3 inches of precipitation there. While again Kodiak picked up 1 1/4 inches so far, that whole area will be shifting eastward tonight. Otherwise, lighter rainfall amounts up along the North Gulf Coast areas, with 0.05 of an inch falling in the Seldovia area and around Homer, while about 1/10 of an inch so far is falling in Seward, and much heavier rain will be moving into those areas tonight and during the day tomorrow. Otherwise, pretty strong winds occurring with this system here, with winds gusting as high as 85 miles per hour at Nikolsky. They're still receiving 65 mile per hour wind gusts Saturday afternoon there out of the north, and 40, 50 mile hour winds have occurred across the Alaska Peninsula, and quite windy conditions up across Bristol Bay. 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts southwest Kodiak Island, say Sitkinak and those areas. To go along with that heavy rain on the peninsula there, windy, wet weather spreading up into Bristol Bay. And then back to the west, just high pressure out here, and a weak warm front bringing some light rain into the far western Aleutians. And then here's that stationary front up there along the north slope in the Arctic coast. High pressure over the southeast coast. Got clouds coming in, as you saw in the satellite loop there, from all this moisture coming up to the North Gulf Coast. Takes a turn to the east, and mid and high level clouds there over the northern panhandle, but a little bit better conditions down to the south with low clouds and fog out along the coast. For tonight, high pressure in control of the eastern Gulf of Alaska and the panhandle there, as well as up into the Southeast interior looks like a 1,030 millibar high sits up right over the Wrangell Mountains. That'll keep the interior east side pretty dry, and it'll try to hold this front back, but it does advance eastward to southwest Kodiak Island late tonight, and heavy rain will fall in Kodiak State Airport there on the entire eastern side of Kodiak Island. We'll see the heaviest rain. Moderate amounts of rain will fall across northern Bristol Bay, and they'll become more showery across the Alaska Peninsula with much lighter winds, definitely lighter rainfall if it doesn't just shut off completely in some areas there, but it'll stay wet over the areas from Falls Pass into Unalaska out to Nikolsky, and winds gradually diminishing coming down there for the Nikolsky area, and even AKwx with high pressure building in out there. One band of rain comes up across Yukon Delta areas up in toward the Nulato Hills toward morning. Otherwise, the north central interior, pretty good conditions and variable clouds for the panhandle with light winds, low clouds and fog along the coast. And it looks like the precipitation starting to taper off, definitely along the Brooks Range, drying out tonight, and the North Slope as well, but lingering there on the eastern and central Arctic coast, and maybe some drizzle on the west side, but definitely improving. Tomorrow, maybe some partial clearing there around Point Lay, but still hanging on to the low clouds, fog, and drizzle, but very light amounts there. Eastern interior looking pretty nice with really not much in the way of wind for the Sunday forecast here, and partly to mostly sunny skies across the entire eastern interior. Mostly sunny across the panhandle. This high holding tough right off the coast there. And again, that's holding this front back, keeping it from making too much eastward progress. So as a result, that's going to lay down a significant amount of rain here across the southern Kenai Peninsula area. Some of that definitely working into western Prince William Sound and over to the Valdez area in Cordova, but those amounts will be lighter than off to the west. And moderate to heavy rain also on the western Cook Inlet area up to the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Rain across the Kuskokwim Valley into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Front gradually lifting northward, so it'll be ending there across Bristol Bay with maybe some breaks and some sun breaks showing up along the Alaska Peninsula. And then a little more moisture sliding up toward the western areas there. And again, a little bit of, persistent low clouds, fog, and drizzle on the eastern Arctic coast. This next front pushing eastward brings a band of rain, but not much in the way of wind, and the rain won't be all that heavy pushing into AKwx and Atka. We'll see for Monday that front pretty weak, just a narrow band of rain with it, pushes into the eastern Aleutians, so it'll be cloudy and occasionally wet, but winds will be nothing like what you saw over the last 24 hours there, and showers and a little bit breezier back to the west there. Looks like 20 to 35 mile an hour winds, especially out toward Chimney and Attu, with numerous showers out in that area in conjunction with that low farther back to the northwest. And this original front pushes eastward finally, but the southeast coast staying pretty nice, just low clouds, fog along the coastal areas, partly mostly sunny inland. Look for an increase in the clouds, definitely thickening and lowering here over the northern areas as this front approaches from the west, but it doesn't look like rainfall will get too far past Yakutat, and it looks like moderate rainfall for Cordova, and drying out here over the Kenai Peninsula for Seward up into western Prince William Sound. But this next system here on the frontal boundary developing will push a chance of rain into Kodiak again along the east side late in the afternoon. And the main front up here, again, there's that rain pushing across the upper Yukon Valley, Koyukuk, all the way back out toward Kotzebue Sound and into the Nulato Hills here, northeast Norton Sound. That'll actually be overnight tomorrow night, and that'll continue to push northward during the day on Monday, and then kind of hit a wall there known as the Brooks Range, so the north slope won't see much at all, and could see a few sunbreaks along the Arctic coast. Taking a look at the low temperatures for tonight, quite mild here over the southwest with clouds, wind, and rain, and southerly flow. Mid-50s there for the lows, lower 50s here over the inland areas. 40s and 50s really for much of interior Alaska, coolest here in the east side, and even near 40 up along the Arctic coast, upper 40s in the Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow, 70, mid-70s for the southern panhandle with near 70 in the central areas, mid-60s farther to the north, eastern interior here, Tanana Valley. Fairbanks area, 68 to 73 for for the highs there, and mid-60s here over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Lower to mid-60s up in the northwest, as well as Bristol Bay could see maybe some mid-60s, and mid-50s out over the Aleutians. Lows the following morning, now milder up here over the Yukon Delta, lower to mid-50s, mid-50s south central Alaska, and 40s for the Brooks Range, mid to upper 30s eastern Arctic coast, and in the 40s to mid-50s for the Panhandle. Highs 70 to 75 central eastern interior north of the Brooks Range, and a very nice mid to upper 70 pattern for the southern southeast coast with plenty of sunshine.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather here shows a band of IFR from the northwest coast through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, right on down across the Pribilofs into the eastern Aleutians here. VFR, AKwx, IFR moving back into the western areas, and some IFR over the southwest mountains, Aleutian and western Alaska Range, Kodiak Island, and Gulf of Alaska up the east side of the Kenai Peninsula, right on into Passage Canal. VFR for the southeast coast, Yakutat on down, as well as much of the interior. And then that IFR along the Arctic coast, that pulls back, especially here on the west side. VFR breaking out, Point Lay, maybe Wainwright, more likely marginal though. And then that IFR just hugging or just off the coast. IFR less out here over the Bering Sea, eastern Bering, just a band now, marginal for St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, across the Pribilofs and down across Umak Island. Unalaska Island, marginal. Areas of the southwest here, marginal. IFR hanging tough here along the western Alaska Range. Kamishak Bay, east side of Kodiak, on up into the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, that continuous flow of moisture from south to north, but VFR over the southeast coast. And for Monday morning, VFR holds here for the Panhandle, central eastern interior, lower conditions, south side of the central Alaska Range and the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, still IFR. Central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, IFR. IFR here, St. Lawrence Island, on down, again, to mostly west of Unalaska, and the central Aleutians back into some IFR conditions, and then another pretty narrow band out there toward Kiska and Amchitka Island. For the afternoon, IFR again from the Pribilofs up to just south of St. Lawrence Island. A little bit there, maybe along the central, possibly eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, North Slope becoming VFR, and some marginal conditions south side of the Brooks Range, VFR of the central interior. No change here, south central Alaska into the Gulf, still IFR, and that IFR zone along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range and the Panhandle, VFR, although some marginal conditions starting to show up there near Sitka, but hopefully mostly offshore. And for Anaktuvuk tomorrow, marginal becoming VFR. Same trend for Adigan, starting out with the lower conditions in the morning becoming VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, IFR on both eastern approaches. Same forecast and same trend for Rainy, marginal VFR, IFR in the eastern entrance. Heading over to, or up to Windy, marginal VFR, start becomes VFR. And then for Isabel, kind of a marginal day tomorrow, but Mentasta will be VFR. And for Tanita, starting out VFR, and then some moisture may slip on up and make conditions marginal in the afternoon for this pass. And in Portage, IFR the entire day. Chilcoot and White, maybe another couple of VFR days coming up. And for the freezing levels, warmer up here, the cold upper low pulled off to the east, so 6,000 feet now up along the Arctic coast, 8 to 10,000 feet over the interior, warm southerly flow pushing 12,000 feet with the upper level ridge here, eastern Gulf of Alaska and the Panhandle. And really warm air over the Aleutians, southwest Bering, 12 to 14,000. And with the moisture surging northward here with the jet, terrain enhanced areas of considerable moderate rime icing, but way up there above 10,000 feet with the high freezing levels. And then some areas of back to the southwest coast of just isolated moderate. And then a band coming back around with the weakening bent back occlusion from the Pribilofs into the eastern Aleutians above 12,000 feet out here with that next front pushing in toward Adak. Jet stream, south to north flow here, upper level low, still south of the Alaska Peninsula. One portion kind of separating, moving up into the Kuskokwim Bay area. But the main flow will be right up into the North Gulf Coast. Of course, flood watch out for Seward. And 9,000-foot winds, very windy again, 40 to 50 knots, Kodiak Island into the western North Gulf Coast. Much lighter under high pressure over the Panhandle. And also central Aleutians, 40 knots coming in with the next system, 3,000 feet, 25 to 35 out west, lighter for the central Aleutians, and 20 to 25 Kodiak, 30 to 35 in across southern interior, light winds for the Panhandle, and then some 20 to 30 knot winds up here over the interior. And with it, there'll be some moderate chop here for the Alaska Range and also the White Mountains northward into the eastern Brooks Range. Big area moderate chop likely here, south central Alaska, right up to the Nulato Hills, Kodiak Island, and Bristol Bay.
It's a complicated project, but a simple life. You can study whales all over the world, you can study harbor seals all over the world, but you cannot study them in silence all over the world. So we really need this sort of piece of wilderness, this untrammeled wilderness, as they say, in order to answer some of these questions.
So we've been monitoring underwater sound here in Glacier Bay since May of 2000. And the reason why we're doing that is to understand what the park is like from the perspective of a marine mammal, because marine mammals are very dependent on the natural sound environment.
If you sort of bring it back to humans, humans respond to noise in very stereotypical ways, and other mammals do the same thing. So, you know, if you go to a concert with your buddy and the music's really loud, you're going to talk at a higher pitch. You're going to talk louder, and you might have to repeat yourself. And marine mammals do the same thing if it gets noisy. So we're seeing, you know, just which of those three that they actually do. We're here on Strawberry Island for the entire summer.
We sample 8 to 12 hours a day. There'll be 2 people who are on our beach station doing scans, marking each whale in the area, 2 people who are doing focal follows from our tower, which is a temporary tower that we have set up here on Strawberry Island. And then we have 2 people who are in the kayak who are doing fine-scale acoustic sampling for harbor seals. Got a harbor seal at 23 meters.
Got it? What's her bearing?
Bearing is 5822121.
Being able to pair what an animal is saying with where the animal is saying it is an amazing data set. It's a hard data set to get. It takes a lot of work, but it can answer so many questions.
So our cruise ship right here in the background is right on time today. We have a blissful hour and a half before the cruise ship gets here where we can watch our whales in silence. And then our ship comes in, bringing with it the noise that it brings, and we watch our whales while the ship's here to see whether or not their behavior is changing. And then it's going to go up bay and bring passengers to go see the glaciers, and we are going to get that blissful quiet again to see whether or not our whales are going back to that natural behavior.
This is the computer that runs our underwater acoustic monitoring. And there's a 5-mile cable from my office that leads out to a hydrophone that's out recording live sounds in Glacier Bay. And if I turn this up a little bit louder for the moment, that's the sound of a male harbor seal roaring because it's the mating season.
Bartlett Cove, Strawberry Island. Building a good field team and building some good camaraderie is really important. We have sort of these daily routines of things that we do together. So there's a schedule that we check every morning, who's gonna cook lunch that day, who's gonna cook dinner. And then every day we take a group photo. And then every day we do a daily check-in. We talk about what worked that day, what didn't work that day, and what we learned either from the island or from each other over the course of the day. Surface 900600.
Last night, there were anywhere from 8 to 10 individuals right along the kelp bed off the point. And we were trying to figure out exactly what they were doing. So as acousticians, Michelle and I got a hydrophone.
That seemed like the right thing to do.
Put the hydrophone in the water to see what was going on. Well, we dropped the hydrophone and it was so quiet. There was not a single roar.
Nothing. We heard
It was
nothing.
just so unusual.
One of the things we did observe yesterday was 2 large bull killer whales who had come into the area that we learned today were transient killer whales. They do come into this area to hunt harbor seals. This is a pupping ground. That's what they come in for.
Yep.
We cannot in any way, shape, or form definitively link the presence of mammal-eating killer whales with the silence of harbor seals.
No, but it is quite interesting that they happened at the exact same time. It's always an adventure on Strawberry Island. You never know what the day's gonna bring.
This morning at 5:15 in the morning, the area was just boiling with whales. I had one 15-minute scan this morning where I was literally hopping back and forth on either side of the theodolite, calling out numbers to try and get all the whales as quickly as possible. And then 15 minutes later, we couldn't find them. Aside from getting to be outside all the time, my favorite part of doing my PhD is getting to work with Leanna.
It goes both ways.
It helps when you put 2 minds that think differently onto the same problem.
Global ocean noise is a real problem, and there are areas of the ocean that have underwater sound from vessels so often that you could almost consider it an urban environment. Glacier Bay is a very remote area, and it was set aside as a national park in part to do scientific research. And we're privileged to be able to use it as a natural laboratory where we can better understand the impacts of underwater noise.
There are some places that act like characters in your life, and I think that a lot of Alaskans can resonate with the fact that living here is like having another family member. It's like having somebody really, really important who's sort of nudging you to be a little uncomfortable all the time and to stretch yourself all the time because it's worth it. I've lived here for almost 10 years. I've made Alaska my home, and so I'm an Alaskan by choice.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, can see still heavy ice here down toward the eastern coast, and then pulled a fair distance off now, and you see even sea ice free areas are getting north of Point Barrow. And then this area through here of the multi-year ice, the heavier, still holding fast in that area, but melting on the north side of it. And not much change expected for the next several days other than a slow thaw. Northwest, north to northwest, 10 to 15 on the south coast for Sunday. Northwest 20 Clarence Strait, light northerlies there for Stevens Passage. South 15 Lynn Canal, south to southeast 10 to 15 on the north coast with 8 to 9 foot seas. Small craft advisories in the extreme north coast on Monday with 10 foot seas. 10 to 15 from the south southeast for the central coast here, and then the south side. South end of the coastline, northwest 15. Same thing for Clarence Strait, north 10 Stevens Passage, south 20 for Lynn Canal. And Prince William Sound, east 20 tomorrow with 4 foot seas. Small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast, easterlies 25 to 30 knots with seas up to 17 feet here on the west side. Gales for the Barren Islands with 18 foot seas, east 35 knots, 40 knot winds for Kamishak Bay, and northeast 35 for southern Cook Inlet, 25 knots out of the northeast for the northern Cook Inlet area. North 15, winds really coming down on Monday here for the Cook Inlet zone, 3 to 4 foot seas. Northeast 15, also a big decrease there for Kamishak Bay. East 15 for the western North Gulf Coast and Barren Islands. But the eastern coast, or the eastern zone here with Middleton Island zone, southeast 30 knots, 11 foot seas, and east winds at 20 with 4 foot seas for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, southeast 30 there on the east side. Shelikof Strait, east 25. Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southeast 20. Small craft advisories from Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, but just 15 knot winds out of the east for the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. East 25 for Bristol Bay. Those come down a little bit, east 20 on Monday, northeast 20 on down to Cape Sarachev, south side northeast 20, but from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, we've got east at 20, southeast 20 on the east side of Kodiak. Fox Islands tomorrow, northeast or north-northeast, 25 to 30 knots, and then northwest 25 to 30, 10 foot seas there for the central Aleutians. and then south-southwest at 25 for the western zones. And then for Monday, southwest 25 to 30, a little bit brisker, but not too bad there for the western Aleutians. AKwx west at 20 all the way over to Nikolsky. Unalaska Island, south winds, or west to south winds, 10 to 15 knots, so really laying down with seas 4 to 8 feet. On the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, small craft advisories due to east winds at 25 knots, north at 20 for the Pribilofs, east 20 knots for St. Matthew Island, northeast 15 north of or along the Yukon Delta coast, south 15 for St. Lawrence Island. Southeast at 20 on Monday there for St. Lawrence Island, southeast 15 here, 15 to 20 for the entire southwest coast, south 20 for the Pribilofs, as well as St. Matthew Island, those seas 5 to 7 feet. And the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, west-southwest 10 to 15, west 10 for the central coast, southwest 15 for the west side, and from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales, south at 20 with 6 to 8 foot seas. And then for the outlook on Monday, light southeast winds here from the Bering Strait up to Cape Beaufort, and then the western and central coast, east 15, even lighter winds in store for the east side. And taking a look at tonight's weather again, high pressure really built into the eastern Gulf of Alaska and Panhandle into the southeast interior here. That's going to keep it dry, but there will be low clouds and fog along the coast. And then the front here to the west gradually trying to push eastward against that high. Heavy rain shifts from the Alaska Peninsula today into the Kodiak Island area, or is actually already going on there, and will continue tonight with gusty winds. They'll tend to increase along the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula, but to a greater extent during the day tomorrow, we'll see that heavy rain area shifts up to the Kenai Peninsula, especially on the south coast, Resurrection Bay. Flood watch out for the Seward area for beginning Sunday evening through Tuesday morning, with a good shot of rain here across the southwest interior. Some of that's starting to lift northward there into the Selawik, Kobuk Valley, Kotzebue Sound area. Dry to the north and east. Mostly sunny and mild over the Panhandle. Next front weakening as it pushes in towards the eastern Aleutians on Monday. This front also weakening with rainfall not so heavy as it tries to get into Yakutat back to Cordova. Drying out over the Kenai Peninsula. Central interior drying out, but rain shifting up across the northern valley south of the Brooks Range.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.